Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Call to Defend podcast. This is Josh here with Caleb, and we're going to be continuing our conversation regarding to home in the book of Exodus.
Or abusos for us Greek nerds.
So, we're actually going to start a passage, Caleb, that doesn't have the word there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have abusos or to home there in this section.
Yeah.
But I think we'll see the interesting parallels as we go through it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Wow. Okay, then. All right, we're going to Exodus 14. We're going to start at verse 21. And this is the popularly known as the Red Sea. It's technically the Reed Sea. But that's for another day. I'll read the verses right now. So starting at verse 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the Yam, so the sea, and Yahweh drove the Yam back by a strong east wind all night and made the Yam dry land, and the Mayim were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the Yam on dry ground, the Mayim being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued, went in after them into the midst of the Yam, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watched Yahweh in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down to the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord," or Yahweh, fights them against the Egyptians. And it keeps going. We're going to keep going eventually. But I do want to at least finish that one paragraph. Do you see anything that's really interesting language-wise here?
Yeah, the two different word usages, I guess. The Yam and the Mayim.
Yeah. So Yam, we mentioned before, is the Hebrew word for sea, which is also the name of, I believe it's Canaanite god, which is it's just interesting how they lower him to just being merely the sea. But we talked before about how we might open the scopes a little bit to capture sea and Mayim with Tahom, with the Tahom being the anchor, but these other things kind of tying into it as well because they use them synonymously in some cases. Mm-hmm. So we have the fact that there's the sea, the Reed Sea or the Sea of Reeds.
Yes.
And they're there, and the waters are split.
Mm-hmm.
And dry land appears.
Yes.
Does that not sound familiar to you?
It does sound familiar. Yes.
What does it sound like?
It's Genesis 1.
It's Genesis 1. We have the parting of the sea. So we have day 2 and 1 happening. Mm-hmm. Sorry, day 2 and 3 happening again.
Yeah.
The water is split, dry land appears, and they pass through. Hold on to that because I think that's a very rich application point.
Josh is pointing at me very directly.
That we can really dive into, and I think will kind of put things in perspective for both of us and for everyone listening.
Yeah.
But let's hold on to that. I want to come back to that because it will be unpacked further with other passages that talk about this. But, okay, so we have the waters are parted and dry land appears, and they are able to pass through as if there are no waters in the way. It's all held at bay. But then we have a storm comes, or God as like the storm god shows up. And like he's been there, but he shows up in a way that's like now not in provision, but in judgment. And so he provides this chaos or this disorder or panic within the Egyptians because now the storm is throwing off their wheels. They're now in a panic that they're going faster into in between the waters as they already were charging after him because Pharaoh set them to.
Yeah.
And then here's where we pick up in verse 26. Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the Yam, that the Mayim may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, upon their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the Yam, and the Yam returned to his normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled into it, Yahweh threw the Egyptians into the midst of the Yam. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, all the host of Pharaoh that had followed them into the Yam. Not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the Yam, the Mayim being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
You said in verse 28 the waters. Is that the Mayim again?
Let me make sure
The beginning of 28.
Let me make sure I was right about that. I believe I said Mayim, but let me make sure. Yes, it is Mayim.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have Tehom in this passage. But we do get this interesting description. The waters are parted, dry land appears, Israelites pass through.
Right.
Egyptians begin to pass through, a storm comes, waters return.
Yes. Yes, you're looking at me. I know it's the flood narrative.
It's the flood narrative. This is a micro decreation. I wish it was a word, I don't think I used that in the last podcast. I wish I did, decreation. I think that's a better way to kind of understand the idea of the flood. Because you have the creation and a decreation. And now you have a decreation of the Egyptian soldiers that are going through.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, sure, that's one way to put it. But know that I'm not just reading into this.
Right.
Because there's actually the later authors and the guy who wrote this book, aka the next chapter, and then authors later, look back on this with more language
Right.
and discussion.
Right.
Unless you have any other reflections you want to...
No.
Okay, so if we go to Exodus 15, this is a song that Moses and the Israelites sing together to Yahweh. And it says, I will sing to Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and his rider he has thrown into the Yam. Yahweh is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my Elohim, and I will praise him. My father's Elohim, and I will exalt him. Yahweh is a man of war, Yahweh is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host he cast into the Yam, and his chosen officers he were sunk in the Red Sea. And then we get...
And that's verses 1 through 4.
Yes. And then we get, the Tehom covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrow your adversaries. You send out your fury. It consumes them like stubble. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The floods stood up in a heap. And the word flood there is not Tehom, but the next word, the Tehom, congealed in the hearts of the Yam. Moses' song looks back on this previous chapter as a decreation. Like, he doesn't just provide this like in its narrative style. He looks back with the song with the vocabulary.
Yeah.
He's going back and saying, look, they are the Tehom. They are parted, and then they reconverge. And he describes them as like, here is this decreation, this mini flood of the Egyptians who wanted to continue into chaos. After they just said, you can go, they then act as if they would rather descend back into chaos and enslave others, which is a spit in the face of the image of God and a variety of other things, to then decreate them in an act of judgment, giving them the fullness of what they desire, which is death, but death unto themselves rather than death unto the Israelites.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the Septuagint right now, and curiously, abusos is missing.
Interesting.
It's not there.
What do they use instead?
Looking at it, it appears as though... Oh, it's a ponto. Sorry, I just missed the word. I do recognize it. Ponto, which is, fun fact, where we get the name Pontius from. Like Pontius Pilate. So, make of that what you will. I think, in terms of discussing chaos and who Pontius Pilate is or was and what role he served, I think it's a pretty intentional name choice at the very least. I mean,
yeah.
he would have chosen that name because he was the 5th governor of Judea. But because it's Pontu Akalaphen Autus, which would be he covered them, and then the dative makes it he covered them with water.
Yeah.
So, or he covered them, with sea. Right, the word ponto is sea. Well, it'd be pontos in its lexical form. So it's interesting there that they choose sea as representative of chaos
Yes.
rather than just tahom or abusos.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the interesting thing about that, remember that and I kind of mentioned this early in this podcast, that they used yam, they used tahom very specifically, but sometimes they would use yam almost synonymously in some contexts.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me if the Greek translator, in his mind, is doing that, which plays into the language of Jesus walking on the sea, which I need to check the Greek on that if it's still ponto, and if it's playing into that synonymous parallel there.
Yeah.
Because it specifies more than that Jesus just walks on water. It very much says that he walks on the sea.
So yeah, I'm looking at the Greek of Matthew 14 right now, and it's interesting. Right, so Matthew 14:25 is where it initially says that Jesus steps out into the sea, right? He walks on the sea. But the word they use there is not abusos. It's not ponto. It's thalases, which is the tamest word for sea, I guess.
Which is interesting considering it's also like,
Right.
considering the scene they're in with the storms and everything.
Right. Yeah, so like whenever it talks about them just, they're next to the Sea of Galilee, it uses thalasos, right, which is the Greek word for sea, right, generically. So, sea. I'm not sure why exactly they use different words for sea. I don't know what determines whether they use pontos or thalasas, but...
So here's my theory. I'll put this,
Sure.
because as you were looking at that, I reflected on your first question about, why might they not have used tahom in the Septuagint in the Exodus 15 passage. If we look back again on Exodus 14, they keep swap between yam and mayim.
Yeah.
And then they throw tahom in there. So they're using all three to synonymously describe the same thing, but with different layers. That the waters, because it's God, he moved the waters just as easily as he moved them in Genesis 1.
Right.
But it's the sea, which is also described as the tahom, which is the chaos waters, but also the waters that man has no ability to control over. This is purely a God act.
Right.
Hence why it says, like, Moses put his hand out, but Yahweh washed or moved the waters aside. Similarly, it would not surprise me if in the Greek mind, and I have to revisit the New Testament passages, it would not surprise me if they're pulling the same kind of trick of, okay, you have this very chaotic scenario with the storms and, like when Peter is called out by Jesus to walk on the sea, and it's like all that storm and stuff, and a variety of other ways to describe these moments. It would not surprise me that if they're using the tame water for sea, that they're making a theological statement about him, just like they did with Genesis 1, where when God was seemingly not there, it was chaos and darkness. But under him is just water. It's nothing to him.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
It would not surprise me if that is the mind of Matthew. You were reading from Matthew, right?
Yes.
It would not surprise me if that was Matthew's intention, given that he was Jewish, if that's what he was doing.
And given how heavily the Hebrew scriptures influenced his gospel.
And given that it's the same divine author inspiring both authors.
There it is. Yeah.
But that's not it. We're not even that's not even all the commentary. Genesis and Exodus of the Torah are probably the two most important.
Yeah.
In some sense, they're
Yeah.
all important. If we had some weird hierarchy for the Old Testament, the Torah be on top.
Yep.
Of all the books. But then within that, Genesis and Exodus set the tone and the themes for everything that follows after.
They are the bedrock on which the rest is built.
Exactly. So Genesis is like the bedrock, but Exodus is like kind of integrated in there because so much Exodus language is pouring out in the rest of the Bible.
Right.
Especially in Matthew.
Yeah, it's similar to kind of how the Gospels, despite kind of being written later than a lot of Paul's epistles,
Yeah.
but kind of how they are the bedrock which the New Testament is built upon,
Yeah.
right? Paul's epistles are still important for helping us to understand the Gospels.
Yeah.
But Paul's epistles mean next to nothing, really, if we don't have the bedrock of the actual teachings of our Lord.
Right. There would be no New Testament if Jesus had not risen,
Exactly.
which is Paul's whole point, I believe, in 1 Corinthians.
Yes, 1
He
Corinthians
says, like, if Christ had not rise,
15.
our faith would be in vain. If Christ had not risen, there would be no New Testament.
Right, exactly.
And so, yeah, no, that's a very good point. But like I said, so I think Exodus alone kind of makes it clear that this is a decreation event within the Torah. But if you're still not convinced for some reason, and mostly just so I can also condense some of our study a little bit, so we don't have too many repeats. We go to Psalm 106. I'm going to start at verse 6, just for time. The psalmist writes, "We have sinned with our fathers. We have committed iniquity. We have acted wickedly. Our fathers in Egypt did not consider your wondrous deeds. They did not remember your abundant loving kindness, but they rebelled by the sea, at the Red Sea. Yet he saved them for the sake of his name, that he might make his might known. Thus he rebuked the Red Sea, and it dried up. He led them through the Tehom as through the wilderness." I'm going to pause there. Here's the interesting thing, too. Wilderness is another, one is to describe dry land, obviously.
Yeah.
Is another way to describe the realm of unordered creation, or sorry, unordered, not created.
Yeah.
It's a dry land version of the Tehom.
Right, yeah, you get that kind of with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes. And we're going to go further into that in the Chaos Monsters.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump your gun there.
No. I'm saying we do the Chaos Monsters episode classroom. We're going to dive really deep into some of that stuff too, the
Cool.
mixture, because, like I said, this is kind of like a companion, specifically on the water aspect. But the wilderness might be something we eventually do. I don't want to come too close to what Bible Project's already doing on theirs.
Yeah.
Because they're covering the wilderness right now, if you're interested in looking that up. But we get this, that they're complaining, they're worried. Like, if you remember in the Exodus passage, he says, "Why do you complain to me, or why are you worried about this?" If you read a few verses before we started, he's saying, just Moses, go out there, put your hand up, water will part. So he's like, even though that they were whining, even though they were ready to rebel against him, and they were rebelling against him, they're blaming him.
Right.
He still showed them love.
Mm-hmm.
He still saved them. And what does he do? He rebukes the Red Sea. It dries up. He led them through it as through the wilderness. So he saved them from the hand of the one who hated them, a.k.a. Egypt, and he redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. The waters covered their adversaries. Not one of them was left. Then they believed his words. They sang his praise. So they used Tehom again for this passage. And they used the same narrative of, like, this is a decreation. This is almost like a cosmic event for Israel. This is Israel's cosmic ark moment, that they are being brought through as the ark is brought through the Tehom. They are brought through safety, which I think I'm going to jump to this point now. I wanted to say this a little bit, but I think just to kind of put in our minds, think about this. We're talking about the Tehom, the Abusos, the Yam, the Ponto, the variety of words to describe this chaos water.
Yeah.
As chaos and disorder. God parts it and he has them go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not a very wisdom-based teaching of sometimes the way to life is
Through
the
the
passage
chaos.
through chaos?
Yeah.
Which is also the Christian message that the way to life is through death.
Right.
Through Christ's death, there is new life, and our old selves must be put to death so that we may have life. Not only that, but we must go through death so we may experience new creation eventually in life.
Right, and of which baptism is a symbol.
Yes.
Right, just as Peter says in his epistle.
Right.
His first one.
and there's days where it feels like, okay, Lord, why are you bringing me through this? There's days where that's just unfortunately the world around us with supernatural forces and the evils of humanity.
Right.
There's days where that is also going to be judgment, maybe, like you feel like you're being decreated in a sense.
Yeah.
But also there's days where you're being brought through as provision. Life is being brought through this chaos, through this disorder of life, whether it be through persecution or something else that for you, like I don't want to. I don't want to like undervalue this, and therefore like it covers every little thing. Like, oh look, this is
Right.
all my cosmic. But like I don't want to like underplay it. But I also don't want to overplay like saying you only experience some persecution.
Right.
But like when you're going through chaos, when you're going through disorder, when you're going through the attacks of the world around you, sometimes God will bring you through that
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
way to show you His provision, to show you His might, because He parted the sea so you could walk through.
Yeah.
All right, there's one more verse. It's a little bit crazier. It's Isaiah 51.
Okay, let me pull that up in the Septuagint.
This one is where things are going to get a little bit weirder. And is definitely going to play into some later stuff that we'll talk about in this channel. So I'm going to start at verse 10. Actually, I'll start at verse 9. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Yahweh. Awake as in the days of old, the generations of long ago. Was it not you who chopped Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon? Was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great Tehom, who made the depths of the Yam a pathway for the redeemed to cross over? So the ransom of Yahweh will return and come with joyful shouting to Zion, and everlasting gladness will be on their heads. They will obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Okay, so first off, let's just go work backwards. We have the drying of the sea, so the redeemed can walk through. So we're using redemption language, which would be a great study for us to do at some point. Understanding redemption, because it plays heavily into the New Testament, especially in Pauline epistles. Especially Romans uses so much redemption language. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, verse 9. Was it not you who chopped Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon, or the Tanin? This is very interesting because now we have a dragon in the Hebrew Bible being described as part of this Exodus event. So here's what's interesting. We're going to do a whole series on chaos monsters. The Bible frequently, at least in the Hebrew Bible, calls Egypt Rahab at times as reference to a chaos monster sea dragon. And they sometimes don't even just call it Egypt, they just call him Rahab. And like, yeah, that dragon, that Rahab, sorry, not there, we don't have a there. It's just a nice soft H. Rahab. The sea dragon, the Tanin, which is also a Psalm 74 creation description of Genesis 1, where he pierces a dragon. So Isaiah is looking at this in the Hebrew Bible with the lens of that this was not just a decreation of the Egyptian soldiers, but it was a creation moment for the Israelites. That they're experiencing like this creative moment, and the Egyptians are experiencing this decreation. That those who, and here's the thing too, those who are walking with Israelites are not just Israelites, they have some Egyptians who are walking with them as well. So we have those who are walking under God's covenant in this safety towards new creation, towards this walking towards into the wilderness, but getting ready for that of which is the promised land. And the Egyptians are caught up in the chaos waters. And then within the Hebrew, you have that it's described almost like this dragon-piercing moment, which we're going to get into in our Chaos Monsters series. But it's wild stuff of how they describe this entire event. This moment that we have great thought about, we think like, oh yeah, we have such a cultural thing about the Red Sea, part the sea, so you can pass through. But for them, it wasn't just a miracle, which I'm not going to downplay the miracle there, but it's also a decreation and creation event for them. It's a creation for Israel going into new life where they will become a nation of their own and not just enslaved. But also it is the decreation of those who sought to oppress God's people, sought to go against the creative order, which is treating others as we are all image of God.
Yeah.
This is a very fascinating way that the biblical authors, obviously by the guidance of the Holy Spirit, use this language to describe events. events that they're going through. And it's like this miracle has a cosmic backdrop to it. I don't know. I think that's just kind of wild stuff.
Yeah, no, it's very fascinating. And I love seeing how God repeats themes throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
Right, through actual historical events. And the way that you can then see his orchestration.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And then, as Paul says in his epistle to Timothy, we focus, I say this a lot, we focus a lot on the all scriptures God breathed and it's good for correcting, reproof. But just before that, he says that it is there to also make one wise. So this is also not just a, hey, here's a cool thing God did. It's a moment to put the reader in a position to think about, okay, God is the one who parts chaos. Mm-hmm. So that way those who are his people, those who are faithful to him, those who seek relationship with him, they will pass through into life. They will pass through chaos, through death to life, which is the ultimate promise fulfilled in Christ. But that we should also warn those who are not walking in fellowship with him, that desire to walk in chaos, that they will receive chaos. They will receive death, but there won't be newness of life that comes with it. It will be like this continual exile and separation. They will go through a decreation of sort within this language. Something that I think that brings, a lot of wisdom to how we kind of see the world around us and why sometimes God's allowed things, because it's the idea of death into life, but also the idea of, hey, let's go warn our brothers and sisters. They're acting out. They're going towards the chaos where they shouldn't be. But as you said last time, sometimes the things that we very much want are the things we get. And the things that they want are chaos. They want to enslave. They want disorder. They don't want to see everyone as this shared image of God. They want to see them as, these are our slaves. We're losing our slaves.
Right. Yeah.
And God is like, no. These are my people who I'm going to work through for all of you.
Yep.
And I bring them through death to life, through chaos to life, through the waters, and I'm cutting off the dragon that's seeking to tear them apart.
Yeah.
It's wild stuff, man. Wild stuff.
Very much so.
Any other thoughts from you?
No. I think I'd like to look into the Isaiah passage a little more. There are just some things that I noticed that were interesting, but that's a topic for another time, I think.
Yeah, with the Septuagint, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the Septuagint, I'll just kind of say, is that they don't have this extra dragon part. Now, that doesn't, the home part is still there.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the Septuagint doesn't have that. And so what we understand is that, at least with the Masoretic texts, and I believe, I have to check the Dead Sea Scrolls again, they do have this dragon. So there's something original here, but there's also this other decision that was made,
Sure.
or whatever the text they had access to. We just remember that the Septuagint isn't the original,
Right.
but it does provide a lot of influence in understanding New Testament stuff. So it'd be good to look into.
It can help. It's a good tool to help us understand the mindset of the people at the time, certainly of Christ.
Yes, of course.
And also just generally historical understandings of these passages.
So this might be something we look into, the history with the Septuagint, maybe like what happened here.
Yeah.
Just a fun little interjection thing could be fun to do. But yeah, that's the flood in a microcosm with Israel and Egypt.
Yeah.
And still, they're still walking through the water into new life, and they're still walking, and they're entering into death. And so we're going to pick up with some more spots within the wisdom literature. We're exiting the Torah through our study, just due to the fact that we're treating it like a broad theme study, but we're still anchored to home.
Right.
But we're gonna keep going through and see the different ways that they continue to use this as we prepare ourselves for the New Testament authors and what they do with apuson, ponto, and a variety of other languages and words for the sea and the chaos.
So thank you all so very much for watching. We really do appreciate it. Give us your thoughts about everything that we talked about here, and let us know that we can be praying for you if there are moments of chaos that you're in your life. You know, I mean, you don't have to go into details in the YouTube comment section, but just, you know, hey, I've really been struggling with this, or hey, this is an area of chaos that's in my life, and I could really use God's guidance in getting me back to life. So please let us know, and feel free to like and subscribe. Right, bring some order to our channel. With all that said, guys, thanks so much for watching, and Lord willing, we will see you in the next one.
See you guys.